We're here to pay our respects to a beloved husband, brother, a father, a grandfather, a community man. Tzvi ben Moshe Harold Isaacs was blessed to live a long life, 99 years, and to be married for 66 years. Very, very special. It's very special merit and schus that he had. We'll hear a little bit from the family. I just want to share a couple of thoughts with you before I introduce the family to speak to you. Thinking about the fact that Harold was very much involved, very in the community for many, many years. Great student, although he went through the difficulties of the Depression, which took away from his ability to get maybe the schooling he would have liked to have had. But despite that, very talented individual who became a successful businessman in his life. And although he lived here in Cleveland, as the expression goes, Libi b'Mizrach, his heart was in the East. He was a true Zionist. His heart wanted to make Aliyah. He smuggled arms for the Haganah in 1948. His heart was in Israel. He lived here, but Libi b'Mizrach, his heart was really in the land of Israel. I was thinking, if you think about the life of someone who lived to the age of 99, how many different eras of the world did he live through? End maybe of World War I, the period between World War I and World War II, the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, the Six-Day War, all the trials and tribulations that we've had in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel over all these years. But in America, think about all the years, all the things that have happened, the special occasions, those things that we think about that were so special, those memories that are etched in our minds, whether it's 9/11 or those remember the assassination of JFK, whatever those things were that were important as we were growing up. These are all things that the riots in '68, the things that I remember as a child, the things that he lived through in his life, the growth of his family, having the nachas at the very end of his life of having a grandson who became a chassan, who got engaged, something very, very special. A lifespan that covered so many different things in so many different eras of history. But our rabbis tell us an interesting thing. Our rabbis put it in an interesting way of phrasing this. They said, we know we put up a monument, we put a stone up within the year. Why do we do that? Why do we put a stone at a person's grave? Our rabbis tell us because on that stone we have a little bit of epitaph, a little bit of the life of the individual, so that we know what the person was like in their life. And our rabbis tell us, and that's why traditionally we put it up before the end of the year, before the first yard site, because the feeling is that after a year people start to forget. We want to make sure people don't forget. However, our rabbis tell us, tzaddikim, righteous people, good people don't really need that, because their actions, ma'aseim, heim zichronam, their actions are their legacy, are their history. Their accomplishments are their history. Their careers, most importantly, their families, the chesed, the kindness that they did throughout their lives. Those are really all their legacy. Those are their legend. Those are the things to take with them in the world to come. Our rabbis share with us a thought that when you go back in the Chumash and you read about our ancestors, particularly the patriarchs and the matriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, when we talk about them, you find an interesting thing. Our rabbis make a comment at one point in the beginning talking about Abraham. And God tells Abraham that, when you settle in the land of Israel, I will make you great, I will do this, I will do that for you. And Rashi makes a comment, he says, I will give you greatness that we say in our davening and our prayers, Elokei Abraham. We talk about the God of Abraham. And then we say he will make you great, because we'll say Elokei Yitzchak, we'll talk about the God of Yitzchak. And then again, we'll talk about the fact that you have a grandchild named Yaakov, Elokei Yaakov, we mentioned there, Shemon Esrei, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. But the end, he says, you would think we would end all three, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mogein, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And how do we end off the blessing? Baruch Atah Hashem, Mogein, Abraham. B'cha chosmin, below b'kulan. You will be the final mention in the blessing. That's a simple reading, what Rashi says. The Bnei Yissaschar, one of the great writers and thinkers, once commented, he said, each one of the avos, each one of the patriarchs stood for a different attribute. Abraham was the concept of kindness, chesed. Yitzchak was gvura, inner strength. Yaakov was a sort of a mesh, a synthesis of the two. He was Torah. Each one was a particular aspect. God's telling Abraham, they're all great, but you know what will bring the ultimate redemption? Your concept of goodness, the concept of chesed, of kindness. Kind people are what makes the world tick. And I think we could say about Harold that he was a kind man, he was a good man, loved his family, loved his community, loved Israel, loved the state of Israel. He was a person who had a sense of love, a sense of feeling, a connection. So although it's hard to say goodbye to a husband and a father and a grandfather at any age, at the age of 99 it's hard, but in a sense he had an accomplished life, did a lot in his life, and he had the nachas of watching his family grow up. May his memory be a source of strength to his wife. May she continue to have health, be well, and the children and grandchildren, God willing, Mirz Hashem, there should be great-grandchildren in the future. We'll all look back and hear stories about their grandfather, great-grandfather, and learn from his legacy, learn from his life. I'd like to begin by asking his daughter Deborah to share a few words.
I wouldn't be the person I was today if it wasn't for my father. He was always my great, and my mother, but my great inspiration. And when I had problems during my teenage years, he made sure I got the right help, and I turned around and I got through college. I graduated a little bit older. Well, my mom helped with that too, but I became a teacher and self-sufficient, which I so much wanted because they assisted me. And I always have fond memories. When my sister was born, he took me to the hospital. They wouldn't let me in, but that he tried. And just going away to camp and just exposing me to his wonderful family, to my wonderful grandparents that I still miss every day. And he's truly going to be missed. We were hoping for the big party in October, but it's Hashem's will. He was taken from us. Now, he was really in fairly good health until like 3 weeks ago when he had pneumonia, and we did our best to keep him comfortable and hospice assisted as well. But it was still a shock. It was still like devastating knowing that he left this world, but it was in his sleep, and he had like no suffering, and we were all with him and loved him, and he loved us. And the last words he said, because I went to Florida for my son's l'chaim, I want Moshe to come and see me, and I told him Moshe wants to come and see you too. So we left in good terms, and my first cousin couldn't make it. He was just here for this party. So we had the 100th party early. So he really, I inherited his creativity, but he always wanted to make something new. He was awarded 10 patents, and he knew about physics, and he knew about basic engineering. And business was hard. Unfortunately, it ended in Chapter 11, but it was still a success. I worked even for him in the factory where he made these products before I went and finished up school. And in the past 8 years, working on a comprehensive system to solve the energy crisis in a unique way to harness solar energy. And my cousin even introduced him to someone, but it didn't quite work out because he went back to Eretz Yisrael, and even in hospice he was saying, I have to, get things going. And we would say, Dad, right now you got to just take care of yourself. But he always, his work was his life. And even though he had some connection to Yiddishkeit, he would put yarmulkes on at times. He liked the Havdalah service, but he will always be with us. Every day I will think of my father in blessed memory. And now my nephew Micha comes to speak, and thanks for listening.
Rishus, the rabbi, my father, my mother, my family, uncle, great uncle. It's pretty emotional. I'm an emotional person in general. This is a very emotional time for me. I was pretty close with my grandfather, even though he would enjoy having philosophical debates with me and my siblings, but he really appreciated the fact that we chose the lifestyle that we chose through our parents. Like when I would be at his house, he would take a picture of me putting on tefillin. Made him feel special. There's a lot of anecdotal stories with him. I mean, I remember him on the day of my upsharing a long time ago, and my bar mitzvah, my chasna, my wedding. Just in November, he was by his sixth great-grandchild's bris. Fifth. And right here in Cleveland. And he walked, my wife was amazed, 99 years old, walking to his great-grandchild's bris. Some remarkable big chesed, big kindness from Hashem. One of my favorite stories when I think of my grandfather is 10 years ago, I started to do shidduchim, and I started dating here in Cleveland because I was just a new driver. Parents didn't want me using their car, and I wasn't too nervous to rent, but if there was anybody that would trust me, it would be my grandfather. So he took me around driving. We drove around the streets, Shaker Heights, University Heights, getting ready for the night before my first date. It was one of my first times driving with someone by myself. I didn't tell the girl that, but my grandfather had faith enough in me to let me borrow his car, and I just told him, I'm meeting someone later, and ended up being a long weekend of a lot of different dates with a lot of different people, but we'll keep that for the storybooks. But my grandfather stayed nice, let me use his car for the whole time. He would like to talk about how when he was in Hebrew school, and it was the beginning days of cars. He had a car from the time he was 18 till the time he was 98 or 99. He had his own car. And like the beginning days of cars, he and his Hebrew school teacher would come up with the names of the car parts in Hebrew, trying to use different names because they weren't officially, I guess Bar Ilan or whatever didn't come up with these terms yet. So he spoke fondly of his Hebrew school teacher and his friend Zvulun Gordon, who he went to Zionist camp with, and about how he went to Palestine, 1946, 47. And like the rabbi said, he was very much connected to the land of Israel, and the land of Israel meant a lot to him. In my mind, going to Zionist schools myself and living with the heroes of Zionism, I would think, of Begin, Ben Gurion, Golda Meir, and my grandfather Harold Isaacs was right there on Mount Rushmore with them. In my mind, and we find different heroes. Like even we see from the story of Purim, where King Achashverosh, who was known to be a very wicked king, but Esther, who was very righteous, was together with him. And we see how could it be that someone who's so crazy like him can be together with someone who's so crazy? But in life, we have to have different kinds of heroes. So your heroes in regards to your Rebbeim and your Das Torah are one kind of hero, but your heroes in regards to how to conduct yourself and different types of priorities and just all around, being there, always proud. I don't think he's ever, maybe when I was real young, he got upset at me, but I don't think he's ever was upset at me, and I wasn't necessarily the angel. So to ask Mechila if we maybe we didn't visit enough, maybe we didn't do it justice, give him the proper kavod, honor that he deserved. May be a Melis Yosher for our family. May my grandmother continue to be gesund and stark, healthy, strong, and continue to appreciate all of what life has to offer. And I'd like to call my mom to say a few words, cover her father.
Hello. The truth is that I really wasn't planning to say anything or share anything with you, but I write enough. If anybody knows anything about me, knows that I write once or twice a week on Facebook for the Children of Holocaust Survivor group, and also for a different group that I make an update for in South Bend for my Women's Shabbos Learning Group. Anyhow, a few more points that I want to say to my father. First of all was that he liked brevity, so I'm trying to be short and sweet and to the point. My father died in his sleep when my mother-in-law passed away almost a year ago. In June, my friend Sarah Yantapalik, who I don't see her here, said to me, Ruthie, that's such a bracha. He died in his sleep. They call it Nishikas Hashem when somebody does that. And so when my mother told me that my father died in his sleep, I said, oh, Sarah said to me, that's Nishikas Hashem, and that's so special when that happens. He had strong roots. Like his parents lived a very, very long life. My grandfather passed away 25 years ago. It was just 25 years ago on the day before Rosh Chodesh. He was 98, also in very good health, and had all his faculties, thank God, but also couldn't hear, just like my father. My grandmother passed away 22 and a half years ago, 3 days after she turned 101. My second to last grandchild, Yerachmiel Moshe's middle name was for my grandfather, Moshe, my father's father. And at his bris, my father was kind of sitting in the back. Of course, he couldn't hear that much. And my son, David, who's not always necessarily such a touchy-feely type of guy, said something that just moved me to words, that he was explaining who Yerachmiel was named for, and then he said to the Moshe part. And he just pointed to my father and said, and Moshe's for his father. So like everybody looked at my father, looked at this old man sitting there, but with honor. And that's how my father was. Family to him was always so important. It was not easy physically for him to go down the steps to the basement to get to this bris, but it was very important for him to be at his great-grandson's bris, and thank God he made it. And the baby was named for his father, and that was something that I was very appreciative of. Something that my son Micha touched on was one of his role models or heroes, who he talked about many years after he passed away, was his Hebrew school teacher, Menachem Mendel Medini, MMM, he used to call him. And I think he was, aside from his parents, he was one of my father's inspirations towards Zionism, the state of Israel, going to Palestine in 1947. The 1948 War of Independence were definitely his glory days. That's something which he always talked about. And my father, after that first trip, he went to Israel in 1947. He did not go to Israel for 25 years. Then he went after that maybe 15 more times, but he would always talk about when he went the first time. That's made the biggest rosham, the biggest impression on him, was going to Israel the first time. And the last note, something that was my father was always very proud of, that Golda Meir slept in my grandmother's home. That was something my father would always tell people. Golda Meir, when I was 13 years old, Golda Meir came to the United States, and she slept in my bed. That was something, it was his Yiddishkeit, was his Zionism. That was something which I was able to take hold of and run with that, and eventually become the person who I am today. I guess I'm done, and I'm not sure who the next person will be. So I know I'm not supposed to say thank you. I won't say thank you. So I'm going to go back.
So yeah, as my mother just said, I'm the oldest grandchild and the oldest grandson. And unlike my brother Micha, who lives away. I've been living here for 7 years, and while I've been here, I've been married, and so I probably knew, out of all the grandchildren, I probably knew him the best. I spent the most time with him, and I could go on and on and on and on about stories about my grandpa Harold, and we'd be here to be the longest funeral forever, and that's just from what I know. This is 99 years, so. But if there's one word that I can describe my grandfather Harold, is integrity. He always, almost to his detriment a lot of times, because everyone knows how stubborn he was about but there was something that was important to him, that he believed that was right, whether it was or not, he did not back down at all. And just like my brother and my Aunt Debbie said, that he probably inspired me the most, and I probably learned from him the most since I've been living here. Well, first of all, he taught me a lot about how cars work, and it's because of him that I was able to, I changed a tire for the first time by myself, and so everyone who knew him knows that he had trouble hearing. So I would go around with him sometimes and basically be his orator. I would be his translator, so I could tell him what the other person is saying, and because he, till the day he went, he was working. He never wanted. I know it's not a 4-letter word, but retirement was a 4-letter word to him, and he never considered himself retired. He thought he was going to save the world's energy crisis with solar energy, and so he would have these meetings, and I would go with him, but there was one thing, his temple, Fairmont Temple. He made this wheelchair for one of the congregants, and I went with him to Fairmont Temple, and he didn't tell me that he didn't tell the people that he was going to do it. He just did it, and it was really heavy, and he was instructing me how to put it together and all that, and the people come out like, "What are you doing?" Like, my grandfather's putting a wheelchair, and he's like, I'm the one in charge, and you're gonna go through me. But of course he couldn't hear anything, so it's like, what's the big deal? I'm making a wheelchair, and he thought it was right, and and from him I've learned how to cherish I think integrity is a very good, like, keeping to your principles, and no matter what. Well, to an extent, and and I'll never forget him, and that's it. And I don't know, my cousin Moishi.
Everyone, you'll excuse me if I get a little bit emotional. Sunrise, sunset, how quickly go the days. I remember growing up with my sister in our house. We would watch a Betty Boop cartoon together called Grampy's House. In the cartoon, it would show Betty Boop walking down the street, having a great time on her way to her grandfather's house, and all the people in the street, they would ask her, "Where are you going?" And she would say, "Oh, I'm going to the place where I want to be. I'm going to Grampy's house." Everyone would go, "Oh, I want to go with you." Then they would all follow her. The fireman, the policeman, the mailman, they all followed her to Grampy's house. And they all went and they had a great time. So I just want to tell everyone here today what Grampy's house, my Grampy's house, what that means to me. Grampy's house, to me, represents a place where I could always go no matter what. no matter what was going on in my life, I could always go and I could experience a warm, welcoming face that was always smiling at me, always so happy to see me, always giving. In my youth, I experienced that warmth, that giving, when he would let me drink soda when my parents wouldn't let me. Don't tell them. He let me sit in the front seat of his car when my parents wouldn't let me. He let me take home, me and my cousins all know this, a lot of us still have today, various pieces of hardware, tape measures, flash drive, or not flash drives, whatever they're, flashlights, everything, hammers. I think my basement is full of them. Lots of relics to remember him by. In my adolescence, I experienced that warmth and that giving of my grandfather. Just sitting down with him, learning about him, hearing the interesting stories that he always had about his youth. I'm not going to lie, I heard them more than once, many times. I could probably tell them to you by heart right now. But they'll always be held dear to my heart. He would always tell me about his latest idea, his newest invention, things that he was still working on. I noticed that towards the end of his life, the things that he worked on became more and more centered around really fixing the world and helping the environment. As mentioned already, the last thing that he was working on was how to save the energy crisis. I think the last thing he told me was that if he just gets the funding, he could just fix the ozone layer, and we don't have to worry about pollution forever. And I believe it. In my young adulthood, I experienced that warmth and that giving when he selflessly gave me his car just to drive around, which I still have with me, and I'll always have to remember him by. Grampy's house for me represents a place of determination and standing up for what's right. I'm sure many of you know already, are familiar with, it would be a shame to not be mentioned, my grandfather's valiant efforts in smuggling weaponry from his offices in New York to the state of Israel during the War of Independence. There are many stories of him on the boat with the weaponry, in boxes on his boat, and whoever was in charge of the state of Palestine at that time, the officers would be on the boat, and they would open the boxes, and they would say, "Hey, what is this? What are you bringing into this country?" And he would just say, "Oh, it's pipes, don't worry about it." And they would believe him. Incredible. Many of you may know that, but less of you know the kindness he did to his son and to his daughters throughout his life when others wouldn't do the same. It'll always boggle my mind how my grandfather somehow held the height of his mental faculty toward the end of his life, never stopped working, really, until his last breath. It's a massive inspiration to me and to the rest of my family. That's the second thing that Grampy's house represents to me. The third thing that I think of when I think of my grandfather's house are the expressions of love that are so noticeable on the walls everywhere in 2567 Lafayette Drive. Anyone who's taken a step into the kitchen or any other room in my grandmother and grandfather's house can see how clearly and unabashedly Grandpa expressed his love in the signs that he made for Grandma every single year. Really, the entire wall is covered with them. You can't see. It's crazy. As a kid, I thought it was funny. I didn't understand. But as I grew older, I realized how beautiful it was. I'll end with this. One of the signs that my grandfather wrote, in one of the many years he wrote them, read as follows. Dearest Edith, thank you profusely for Debbie. Thank you, no, it said Debbie. Come on. Thank you copiously for Judy. Thank you greatly for Ruthie. And most of all, Edith, I thank you for you. Well, dearest Grandpa, thank you profusely for being such an important, warm, and giving figure in all of our lives. Thank you copiously for teaching us the true meaning of determination and standing up for what you believe in. And thank you greatly for showing us the importance of expressing yourself and your feelings toward your family. But most of all, Grandpa, thank you for you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I don't know if there's another speaker. But.
Please rise for the Kilmale Rachamim. El Mole Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanpei Ashechina B'Ma'alos Kedoshim Tzvi Ben Moshe Sholach Liolamo Ba'avur Shanach Mispalim Alas Karas Nishmaso B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchaso Lochem Balarachamim Yastir B'Seisher Kinafav Li'olamim B'Yitzror Achayim Es Nishmaso Adonai Unachalaso Yanuach V'Shalom Al Mishkavo B'Yomar Amen. You may be seated. Okay. The burial is at the Zion Memorial Park, B'nai Yeshurun section. Shiva will be at the Isaac's home, 2567 Lafayette. The basic schedule is as follows. There will be no minyanim at the house. Today the schedule will be from after the funeral until 9 p.m. Tomorrow, Friday, from 9 to 2 p.m. And then Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, 10 a.m. to 12:30, 2 to 5, and 7 to 9 p.m.